Welcome to another edition of No Free Lunch, Africa's freshest business and tech podcast, with me, your host, Greg Stewart. Our topic today is digital transformation, and particularly what the impact of this process has been in the insurance and finance sector in South Africa. Joining me today is Dhesen Ramsamy. Dhesen's the Group Chief Technology and Data Officer for Old Mutual Limited. Welcome to No Free Lunch, Dhesen.
Thanks very much, Greg. It's good to be here.
So, Dhesen, we're living through one of the most disruptive periods in the financial services industry, and a lot of that has been driven by digital transformation and AI acceleration, rising customer expectations for seamless digital experiences, and intense competition from both traditional players and nimble fintechs. From your seat as Group Chief Technology and Data Officer at Old Mutual, why has digital transformation become not just important, but absolutely essential for survival and sustainable growth in today's financial world?
Yeah, so I think it's on a few fronts. And the first has to be the use of technology to drive better outcomes for the people we serve, for our clients, for our advisors, for the markets we play in. So at the heart of it, it has to come down to better service provision, better products, better experience for these markets. It not only helps you be competitive in those spaces, but it should help you create those moments in the moments of truth, to not let down a client or an advisor or whoever you're doing business with. And then for institutions themselves, technology has fundamentally helped to drive down the interaction costs. It's helped to reach markets that you otherwise would not have through more physical and traditional means. So it is not, we're no longer, or we should no longer be having conversations about if, but rather how we reorganize and actually deliver through digital transformation.
Yeah, that's quite important about actually delivering. And in terms of that, how has Old Mutual's push into AI and data-driven tools like personalized financial platforms, how's that transformed client experiences in South Africa? And what key metrics, such as engagement rates or satisfaction level scores, show tangible benefits for those segments?
I think our starting point, again, very simple. It comes down to what we just spoke about. It's how we make financial services genuinely accessible. How do we please clients at key moments of truth, whether it's a claim, whether it is providing a quote, all of those things, or a service issue. And accessibility is something like, we don't shy away from, because historically, a lot of people have been outside that kind of inclusion of quality financial advice. I'll use that example, right? So South Africans have a knowledge gap when it comes to financial wellness, for instance. People want to make good decisions about their money, but the tools, the language, the access points, they've been designed for very narrow segments of the population. So a key metric has to be the extent to which we've included people that we haven't necessarily done before. So the why behind our AI push is really about closing that gap. And a good example I want to share here is a smart coach, which we recently launched inside My Old Mutual. It is the My Old Mutual app, that is. It's it's the country's first multi-agent financial wellness assistant. And what makes it very different from a generic chatbot is it engages customers in the context of their actual portfolio, their rewards, their goals, their financial goals, that is. So, we have agents that recognize intent. We have agents enforcing guardrails on devices, one for recommending actions, for screening responses. And it helps people who use it show up for a conversation with a financial advisor a lot better informed and more confident. And, we're building this in what you accurately pointed out is kind of one of the fastest moving periods in AI history. And sometimes, legislation and regulation is catching up to
Yes.
the advent of the technology set. And so we had to figure out how to, deploy this responsibly, take it through a very comprehensive set of guardrails in the business. On the short-term insurance side, for example, the Old Mutual Mutual Insure team is, advancing a Gen AI roadmap focused on high volume servicing interactions and underwriting use cases. And they're taking a phased approach. They start with kind of lower risk, basically process automation, but building out towards more complex applications, as confidence and the capability grows. We get more pleased clients, we get shorter claims handling times. So yeah, customer metrics like, NPS, customer engagement scores, all of those things are what we track when we look at how we drive that out. Then beyond South Africa, in our Africa regions business, AI in the customer experience space is still at an early stage, but there's some practical deployments worth mentioning. In Kenya, for instance, we have a solution running in our call centers. It converts voice into actionable insights in near real time, and it's used for call center training and for surfacing customer experience issues a lot quicker than traditional analytics would have got. So like on the measurement side, well, what I mentioned is customer behavior. With Smart Coach, we can see how customers interact with their portfolios, whether they're completing financial wellness activities, whether they're following through on the goals they're setting. And it's tightly linked with Old Mutual Rewards, which has seen over 2 million financial services activities completed in the past year, which tells you something about appetite, right? The moment you use this technology to deliver something that is far easier to use, it drives better outcomes. And our advisors are giving us feedback
Absolutely.
that, it's the quality of the conversations that are fundamentally changing. So better retention, better
Yeah.
outcomes, better trust.
Yeah, I think generally any system that gets simplified and becomes often, I talking from personal experience, from things like banking and having a headache using an app is the worst
Yeah.
possible experience ever. It just becomes a no-no. So I think from that point of view, seeing that increase or improvement is a positive thing. Just in terms of data privacy, there's a lot of questions arising out of data privacy, not just in South Africa, globally, particularly with AI and the ability of AI to dive into personal detail and maintain personal details. You want to talk to us a bit about how digital transformation is bridging gaps for clients and how you're dealing with the issue of privacy of data and where Old Mutual has tech innovations to improve inclusion, but also to improve data security.
So, like South Africa has a very specific operating context around that. Europe does as well. But you can't walk away from these things when you're trying to drive digital transformation. It cannot be, irresponsibly. So we have PAPIA, which was again, I think, strengthened last year. The regulation, around breach reporting, consent for things like direct marketing, for cross-border data transfers. So the regulator is certainly keeping up there, and it's a good thing. It helps businesses like ours raise the bar for how we handle personal information, because it's a promise we give to clients and advisors. At the same time, you have a population where kind of digital access is uneven. Sometimes connectivity is not guaranteed. A large portion of the populace that we serve have either been underserved, by traditional financial services, or sometimes completely excluded. So you can't just build digital products and assume it's going to reach these people. And when you do build it, you need to ensure that you're serving them as responsibly as possible. So, for example, in that space, Old Mutual Bank, their approaches to solving has been, completely digital first banking. We're targeting South Africans earning between like 1,000 and 30,000 a month, and it's a segment that's been historically kind of underserved by traditional banks. Like, our platforms designed not just to deliver cost effectively, but to work responsibly with the information we've already garnered in the space from our interactions with clients on the other side of Old Mutual. So you have a funeral policy. How do we use that information responsibly? How does that information responsibly feed into modeling? How do we make sure that we're holding the line with our service providers, whether they are giving us, the large language models? How do we make sure we're not furthering bias that might be built into those models? So a series of checks to ensure both that we prevent the use of personal information irresponsibly, and the second is that we're also carrying this responsibility to ensure the models we use don't have a baked in bias and things.
And just in terms of looking ahead a bit, as digital transformation is likely to accelerate even faster as we see AI developments, agentic developments also accelerating. Tell us how you see that landscape changing. Where is that going to benefit clients? Is it going to make things even faster? Is it going to bring down costs further? How do you see that landscape evolving into the future?
I think my honest answer here is that globally we're seeing the industry at a kind of inflection point. There's a lot of
Yeah,
predictions that by the end of this year, more than 80% of large financial service institutions would have adopted Gen AI, and that's up from, like, between 5 and 10% just about a year or two ago. So that pace of adoption tells you something about how competitive the landscape is becoming, especially with the adoption of these tools. I think what's most relevant for the markets or mutual plays in, so Africa in the main, and South Africa more specifically, it's this shift from kind of reacting to problems after the fact to kind of anticipating them. Instead of engaging with the customer after a claim or complaint, or after a lapse, after a financial shock, you're actually using models to engage upstream. You're using data to flag risks and guide better decisions before things go wrong. And that
yeah,
fundamentally changes what it means to be a financial services provider. On claims, there's already a lot of evidence. Aviva in the UK, I always quote this case study, but they've managed to cut liability assessment for quite complex cases by 23 days using predictive modeling and AI. Customer complaints have reduced by orders of magnitude through the use of AI, and that's the journey we're on as well. The reality is, lots of the industry is still stuck between experimentation and execution, which is the thing I told you about earlier on, our financial wellness AI solution. That's telling you that it's gone live is the glory, but the full story is a lot of perseverance, a lot of testing, a lot of experimentation over the course of 2.5, 3 years. That team, like, I'm immensely proud of the team that landed that. So organizations can only close that gap by responsibly experimenting, scaling where the experiments have chosen. So there's some inherent risk. So you got to double down on those bets you made that are showing, kind of good results. It requires more than just good technology. It requires, like, strong leadership, the culture change that goes along with the adoption of, like, a very pervasive technology sector, which is AI. AI is not just in the domain of technologists now. It's not cloud computing, where it took
yes.
us quite a while to be able to show business what cloud computing, the value of cloud computing, and things like that. AI is more a general productivity tool as well. So you get a push from the business too. So leadership, culture, all of that matters.
And then a last question for you. I know you've got time constraints, but you're going to be speaking at the Digital Transformation Summit next week in Johannesburg. I think it's on the 11th of March. Tell us, what is the single most important message or insight you'll be leaving with fellow C-level leaders and digital practitioners?
I think I've been very deliberate about what I want to talk about, and it's the cultural and leadership challenges to AI adoption, in large corporates. And I think it comes down to a few things. It's how we address the fear and resistance at a workforce level. It's hard to separate signal from noise when it comes to things like, oh, is AI gonna suddenly take my job, that kind of thing. So addressing that sort of fear and resistance from the workforce. Then there's leadership ambiguity, and this there's this thing about innovation theater. Lots of executive teams publicly champion AI, but how do we embed it in actual decision making and resource allocation, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Famously, the middle management bottleneck with the adoption of technology set like this will play up. Your data culture versus the data infrastructure. A lot of people talk about, but we need good, clean data. We need the data platform. But what about your data culture? How do you conduct business to ensure that there's continual integrity in your data sets? Sometimes there's a trust deficit around AI decisions in leadership. There's talent challenges. So I think Mutual has been very practical about drawing all of these together under a leadership and culture theme. And that's kind of what I want to incite more thinking about. Not that, I'm going there to share all the answers that I have. It's just to present
Yes.
that this is far more than a technology challenge. We should be thinking a lot more holistically.
Dhesen Ramsamy, I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you for your insights. I think it's great insights, and I think the whole leadership of AI and these developments into digital transformation are critical going ahead. And it will take a very special kind of leadership approach to actually make it meaningful in the marketplace. Thank you for joining us, and I appreciate the insights.
Thanks, Greg. It was a pleasure chatting to you.